in this episode, we're going to talk about boundaries. And actually, this one is really inspired by a blog post we wrote at amsisters.com called The Ultimate Guide for Setting Healthy Boundaries. And this came out just because I felt it was a very important conversation. And I myself struggled with having healthy boundaries for a very long time of my life. So when I finally felt, okay, I think I have a few things to talk about it and share why it is important and why saying no sometimes can be a hard thing, but a very important one.
Mm-hmm. And I think you've learned a lot during those past few years. That's why you came to a point that although it was a challenge to build your healthy boundaries, you kind of understood, especially for us, that we have a lot of empathy for other people, how hard it can be. And I think you made a good summary of how we can stand our boundaries, and let people know what they can and what they can't do regarding our personal space. And also, when we were growing up, we didn't really have a lot of conversations about healthy boundaries. No one was really talking about that. And I think it's really wonderful how nowadays many people are aware of boundaries and what does it mean to, respect another person's opinion and personal space and all that. Those are all kinds of boundaries that we have to take into consideration in our daily lives.
That's right. And I think sometimes we can misunderstand what it means because some people are like, oh no, I know how to say no to others. But if you look deeply into those relationships that you have with people that are really close to you, you might find yourself actually finding a hard time to say no, or even sometimes you're tired and a friend comes to you and start complaining about something of their own lives, but you're really tired and you don't really have the energy, not even to, be a shoulder for them at that moment. And being able to say, like, don't let those things happen and say, that's not the right moment. Can we please talk about it tomorrow? It doesn't mean that you don't care about the person. Of course you do. You have a friendship, but it's just like those tricky moments that sometimes you cannot give full attention to a friend or a family member that other people might judge and say, oh, she's not considering them, or it's not a real friend. It's not, like you shouldn't do this to your mom or to your sister or whatever. But those are also part of healthy boundaries.
And especially because those are also kind of labor, right? It's like emotional labor. It's not because you're not working that it doesn't count, right? Working in a productive way. Because, for example, if you're home all the time, and for example, many mothers in our times, they just stayed at home. So when the kids come back home, or the fathers and husbands or partners come back and they complain about stuff, or they want to have like emotional support, this is also kind of labor. And then sometimes we don't really consider it in that way, and we think it's like, oh, why you're being mean? You don't want to listen to me now? But it's also very draining sometimes. And it's not always that we have the mental space and also the energetic space and position to accommodate someone.
So that's why a few months back, when a friend of mine came to me and said, instead of just start complaining of whatever was happening in her life, she told me like, oh, I have this thing I want to talk to you, but I know it's emotional labor. Do you have the time and energy to listen to this? Is it okay if I talk to you right now? If it's not okay, it's fine. And I felt really appreciated and really happy that she asked me about it and really considered my emotions and my boundaries. And I think it's important to say that boundaries are very important, not only the physical level, but also emotional and energetic or spiritual level, if you consider it. Because it can be, especially like empathetic people, it can be really hard to absorb everyone's energy, especially when you don't want to. So I think like creating healthy relationships has a lot to do with knowing when someone can hold space for you when they cannot.
Mm-hmm. And I think not only like the energetic, it's not only about the energy that you feel from other people, but also like as an empathic person, you put yourself in another person's shoes. So you feel bad for saying no because you kind of can recognize the emotions that the person is passing through. Sometimes being like upset, sometimes angry, sometimes just like disappointed or confused. Like I was expecting you to say yes and you said no. So I think I personally really struggle with that because I feel a little bit ashamed or like guilt of saying no to people, like, oh, they're disappointed on me. So it's something that I still have to work on.
Yeah, especially for people also who don't like conflict, it can be hard.
Yeah.
Like that was my case, especially. Like I don't like conflict at all. So I just rather accommodate myself to what's better for other people instead of just like, trying to impose this is my standpoint. But I had to learn how to do that. Otherwise, you're always, you know, the last person instead of giving priority to your own needs. And this also ties together with self-love and self-care and all those things, because like realizing that your needs are also as important as others. Not like that you're more important than everyone else, but you're as important as everyone else. So you should consider yourself as a priority.
Mhm. And also, I think when we were growing up, we didn't really see a lot of examples in our household of like our parents saying no. They were really like accommodating of others. They were always like the psychologists of the family. So to say, people went there for emotional support, and we never really heard them saying no to someone. And we always said they had a hard time saying no to their own brothers, my mom and my dad. So I think for us, we kind of learned with their behavior. And nowadays, it's a constant effort to break free from accommodating everyone.
And I think, especially with your mom, we kind of learned that being self sacrificing is a good thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, but it's like if you give everything you have, it's because you love that person. And it's like, I'm not sure about it.